Welcome. Welcome to Nzabakas TV. Today's story is not about a queen. It is not about someone born into wealth. It is not about someone who had everything figured out. Today's story is about a woman life almost buried. It is a story about how life can shape you, break you, humble you, strip you, and yet, not always to destroy you. Sometimes, God permits what we don't understand, to build something in us that we would have never chosen ourselves. Today, I want to tell you about a woman people once called the smelly one. It was a Monday morning, cold. The kind of cold that sits in your bones and refuses to leave. She woke up before the sun, not because she wanted to, but because life did not give her the luxury of sleeping in. Her name was Asiba. She sat on the edge of her small bed, if you could even call it a bed. Thin mattress, a room with cracked walls, a bucket in the corner because there was no running water. She looked at her hands, dry, rough, cracked from years of washing clothes for people who would never remember her name. That Monday morning, she already knew it was going to be heavy, because when you are poor, every Monday feels like a mountain. The first time someone said she smelled, she was 16, still a child. She had walked into school that day wearing the only uniform she had. It was clean. She had washed it the night before. But clean doesn't always mean fresh. When you don't have soap with fragrance, or enough water to rinse properly. She sat in class quietly. Then she heard it. A whisper. Then another. Then a louder voice. Who smells like that? She felt her stomach drop. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. Then someone behind her said, "It's Asiba." The class laughed. Not loud laughter, but the kind of laughter that stabs. The teacher didn't say anything. That silence was louder than the laughter. That day, she walked home differently. She didn't cry. Not yet. But something inside her shifted. What they didn't know was that Asiba's house had no proper toilet. No electricity most nights. No father. A mother who worked 3 small jobs and still came home defeated. Sometimes there was food. Sometimes there wasn't. Sometimes they bathed with cold water from a drum. Sometimes there wasn't even enough water. And when your environment smells like struggle, clings to you, people didn't see that. They only smelled what poverty left behind. Another Monday morning. She was now 23. Still struggling. She had found work cleaning offices in town. Every morning she cleaned glass tables. That reflected a version of life she had never known. She cleaned bathrooms that smelled like expensive perfume. She wiped mirrors that showed women with polished nails and confidence. And every time she looked at her reflection in those mirrors, she saw someone small. That Monday, as she bent down to empty a trash bin, 2 women walked past her. One of them wrinkled her nose. "I don't know why they hire people like this." The other one laughed softly. "She probably doesn't even know she smells." Asiba froze. Not again. Not after all these years. She had used the cheap soap she could afford. She had washed her uniform. She had tried. But poverty doesn't wash off easily. That day, she went to the bathroom she had just cleaned and locked herself inside. And this time, she cried. It wasn't a dramatic prayer. It wasn't loud. It wasn't poetic. She just sat on the bathroom floor, with her back against the wall, and whispered, "God, why? Why is it always like this? Why do I try and still get humiliated?" There was no thunder, no voice from heaven, just silence. But in that silence, something strange happened. Instead of anger, she felt tired. Not tired of life. Tired of fighting to prove herself to people. And that was the beginning of change. One evening, her mother got sick. Very sick. Hospital visits. Medication they couldn't afford. Asiba worked extra hours. She skipped meals. She stopped caring about what people said. Because when survival becomes your focus, insults become background noise. But one night, as she sat beside her mother's hospital bed, she looked at the machines, the white walls, the smell of disinfectant, and something clicked. For the first time, she didn't feel ashamed of her smell. She felt angry at injustice. Why should poverty decide someone's worth? Why should someone be reduced to a whisper in a room? And that anger turned into vision. After her mother recovered, Asiba made a decision. She would study, not because it was easy, but because she was tired of being invisible. Took years, night classes, walking long distances, working during the day, studying at night with a candle when electricity failed. People laughed. At your age, do you think you will become a doctor? You study. But this time, she didn't shrink, because pain had shaped her. Humiliation had trained her skin to be thick. Loneliness had taught her endurance. Years passed, slowly, painfully, but surely. Asiba qualified as a community health worker. The same hospitals that once intimidated her now felt different, because she walked in with purpose. And something else changed. She started noticing people others ignored. The old woman who smelled like urine. The child whose clothes were not properly washed. The man who avoided sitting near others. She saw them, because she had been them. And instead of turning her nose away, she leaned closer. She would kneel. She would speak softly. She would treat them with dignity, because she knew what shame felt like. And one day, a little girl in the clinic hugged her and said, "You smell nice." Asiba smiled. Not because of perfume, but because she knew the smell people once mocked had shaped a compassion no expensive fragrance could create. Looking back, she realized something powerful. If she had never been humiliated, she would have never understood humility. If she had never been mocked, she would have never learned mercy. If life had been easy, she might have been proud. But difficulty carved something holy inside her. God had permitted what she hated to build what she needed. So today, if you feel like life has labeled you, if people have whispered about you, if you have been reduced to something small, remember Asiba. Remember that sometimes, the very thing people use to shame you is the tool God uses to prepare you. The Bible says in Romans 8 verse 28, "All things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose." Not some things, not only the beautiful things, all things, even humiliation, even poverty, even rejection. God knows it all. Sometimes we go through difficulty, not because God is absent, but because he is shaping something we cannot yet see. To Asiba's story. If this story touched you, if you
smell
saw
so good,
yourself
my
in
wife.
her journey,
I
don't
love when
forget
you
to
say that.
subscribe. Subscribe and comment. Tell us what part spoke to your heart. We will see you on our next story. Bye.